Hi, I'm Jamie Dorn. I'm the Executive Director of Research, Innovation, and Entrepreneurship at Georgian College. I've worked in the innovation space for more than 20 years and consider myself a bit of a futurist. I watch technological and scientific, social, environmental, even artistic trends, how they have shaped society and where this is taking us in the future. But things right now seem to be changing more rapidly than ever. And there's a term that's floating around, digital transformation, that seems to be popping up in everyday conversation, at least for me and maybe in some of your workplaces. But you're definitely seeing it. We're doing things right now that we wouldn't have been doing even a year ago. You know, all those Zoom calls and, video conferencing, which we thought was a hassle before, and now it's an everyday thing. So, in this short talk, I want to share my perspective on the future of work, but more specifically, take a closer look at leadership and how we might lead our workplaces through this digital transformation with an eye on where it's all headed. Think back to when you got your first email address. When was that? And when did you get your second email address? I remember my first email address. It was when I went to Queen's University and I was at the library and I couldn't access the library system until I had an email address. So I had to create one right there. I made a Hotmail email address that I still use to this day. And when did you get your first cell phone or your first smartphone? There's my BlackBerry. That was the first smartphone I had, and I just thought I had teleported into the future. And when did you create your first professional web page? When did you first purchase something online? What was it? When did you suddenly feel it's okay to be on Facebook while at the same time participating in a video call? Maybe that was like last week. When did you realize that being tied to your office from 9 to 5 each day didn't make a lot of sense and was really not convenient for getting all the things done in a day that you need to do? Maybe you're not there yet, but certainly some of you are and some of you will be soon. Take a look at these pictures. When do you think they took place? Well, I'll tell you. The first one, March 1st, 2020, and the second one, April 1st, 2020. The pandemic has really shifted the way that we are working. Before, when we were all together around a boardroom table, closely collaborating, now the collaboration is entirely done remotely through things like Zoom calls, Microsoft Teams. We're actually getting quite good at it. And in some cases, we've discovered that we can be a lot more efficient in this new digital reality. It seems like overnight, then the work world has completely changed. And when the pandemic is over, it doesn't mean that we're going to go back to what it looks like in the first picture. We're going to be a blend of both of those. What's really driving this change? The pandemic, of course, has really changed the work world drastically in a very short period of time. But it's really actually only accelerated things that were already happening. Like, you might have had one of those video conference call phones on your office desk. I certainly had one. And I never really turned the video on because it seems so inconvenient and so intrusive. And now we do video conferencing calls constantly. It's like, everybody's got a window into your world. And when people do videos like this, they tend to put a nice fancy background up and put a suit on and stuff like that. But I chose not to do that. I wanted you to see, what my world is really like. This is where I work every single day. This is my studio. So I make music in here and, on this computer over here that I work on all day long with my video conferences for work and for fun. And this is the real world now. Everybody has a situation like this in their house. It might look different at your place, but everybody's got one of these now. So another driving force is technology. And technology has been advancing rapidly over the last century, especially in the digital age. Things like advanced computing, artificial intelligence, robotics, virtual reality are now almost everyday things. I recall it wasn't even that long ago. It was about a year or so ago where I was writing an email to a friend. And in the email, I was talking about how I was going to see some new advanced robots. One of them was an android at the University of Waterloo. And I just thought to myself, that is the strangest sentence I've ever typed. And yet it was absolutely real. And another thing that's happening now, and it really relates to this digital transformation, is what people are calling digitization. In the past, you might think of that as the way we went from vinyl records to CDs, where things went from analog to digital. It's more than just converting everything to ones and zeros. It's about what we do with all that data once we have it. Areas like big data analytics at Georgian look at how we collect, analyze, and manipulate huge data sets to gain insight and develop new applications, make better decisions, and ultimately find solutions to the problems that are faced by the world. When things like social forces, global crisis, artificial intelligence, robots all combine, we get accelerated digital transformation. We get a work world that is changing so fast that we can barely plan ahead. Out the window goes the 3 to 5 year strategic plan. When we say digital transformation, you often think, okay, this is all about technology. But actually, digital transformation is more about people and the way that we interact with the world and with each other. It's not just about the cool new gadgets and software. And I would argue the huge shift we're seeing now is mostly about people's attitudes towards work, how they contribute value in the workplace, while also balancing the rest of their lives. So, where's this all headed? If I'm a leader or manager in my company, how do I navigate such an uncertain future? How do I plan ahead? And how can I best help my team adapt and evolve as our digital workplace just transforms all around us? Well, if you look back in history, when technology was making big leaps and completely transforming the work world, there's a tendency there to jump to a very dire conclusion, and that all this progress is actually just going to put us all out of work. The fear is that technological progress will lead to mass unemployment. And let me paint you a picture of the future not too far away where robots and AI can do 90% of the tasks that are currently done by humans. And there's no more accountants because AI can do the job flawlessly. In fact, all the transactions are automated. It's just a computer talking to a computer. And while other computers are running these lights out factories, producing products and shipping them all over the world right to you. So, what are you doing in this work world? Surely you must be unemployed. This kind of fear is nothing new. Perhaps you've heard of the Luddites, or maybe you've called your friend that because they can't fix their own computer. But the term refers to the followers of a famed and potentially fictitious rebel named Ned Ludd, who legendarily went berserk and smashed some knitting machinery in protest, leading others to do the same to protest the introduction of machinery that displaced the need for human labor. The concept was that the machines were replacing the need for workers. This sort of fear has popped up several times over the last 200 years, most notably during the rise of mass production, then in the 50s with the development of automation, when a machine could perform manufacturing functions hundreds or thousands of times faster than any human. In the 70s, it was robotics, large, dexterous machines that could lift car frames, weld parts, and assemble vehicles. As we approach the new millennium, it's the internet. It completely reshaped our office and the way we do work. It eliminated the need for the postal service when email popped up, and you don't need a receptionist because all you need is a website. It basically changed everything about the way we think about business. And now here we are. We're on the verge of AI and robots being able to do every single job you can think of. But the truth is a little different than our fears would have predicted. Employment hasn't gone away. Even over the last 200 years, with all those technological leaps forward and the complete transformations of the workplace, the employment pool has actually remained relatively stable. It stays at around 80% of work-age people. What actually happens? Well, it's that technological disruption does in fact eliminate jobs. And this is logical. If a machine can do the job better, faster, cheaper, then the machine gets hired. So in the graphic, you can see an employment pool that is disrupted by some new technology. A couple types of jobs are eliminated, and those are the orange circles. These people would truly be out of work, or at least displaced. But invariably, the new technology creates new work that wasn't conceivable beforehand. In some cases, the new role is to oversee the operation of the new technology. In other cases, the types of new jobs created are so unlike anything that came before. Think of when the internet was new and companies were struggling to figure out how to monetize things like Facebook. Now you can get a job monitoring Facebook analytics for your company so you can better serve your customers and react immediately to changing demands. Let's pull things back a bit. It's fun for me to speculate where we're headed, but it doesn't help us determine what we should be doing right now to help our teams adapt to a rapidly changing work world. We need to find a balance between the pragmatist and the dreamer. It's important, though, to keep both perspectives in mind because the pragmatist is great at concrete ideas that we can use right now. But if we don't remain flexible, we might not be able to adapt to what's coming right around the corner. And the dreamer's perspective helps us keep an eye on the future so we're less surprised when that shiny new disruption comes in and transforms our workplace all over again. I love this photo here because it reminds me of this idyllic future. And I am the forever optimist. And I like to think that even though we go through challenges as humans, that we will have a prosperous and happy future. As I mentioned at the start of this talk, digital transformation is really about people, how people are reacting and adapting to major disruptions in the way we work and what work actually means. So let's look at four perspectives and see if they can help us shine some light on this idea. Any scientist that's watching the clock will tell you that all of our technological progress is leading to the singularity. Way back in 1965, Gordon Moore noticed that the number of transistors on a circuit board seemed to double every 2 years. And oh boy, that means that's exponential growth. What would this mean going forward? Well, obviously, our computing power was going to get really, really amazing in only a few decades. And it turns out, though, that Moore's observation, which we call Moore's law now, does in fact hold true. And not only for computing power, but for other areas of technology too. In the graphic, you can see where the line deflects upwards as technological capacity starts to climb sharply. That first box represents 2000 to 2020, approximately. And recall the rise of sustainable energy, advanced manufacturing, biotechnology, which are progressing more and more to this day. The next box is where we are right now, 2020 to 2030. We're at the start of a massive digital transformation that leads to everyday artificial intelligence, virtual reality, and global connectedness beyond anything we've ever seen before. Somewhere beyond 2030, things like androids and wildly smart computers will become commonplace. Imagine having a robot friend who knows almost everything, can do thousands of tasks, and is connected to every other robot like it across the globe. Computers, machines are so advanced that they design and build better versions of themselves. They've also solved most of humans' biggest challenges, and life is actually really good. Then shortly after that comes the singularity, the point where at least one of our super incredible computers has assimilated the entire collective knowledge of human and machine kind and knows everything all at once. It can draw on an eternity of knowledge in the blink of an eye. So, as a leader, what do you do with this kind of insight? Maybe you plan your retirement for right around 2030 because after that, there's not going to be a lot to do. The important message here is that we can count on 20 to 30 years of incredible rapid change. So maybe don't invest too heavily in the newest technology right now because it will be replaced within 2 or 3 years. And realize that your employees will need to train and retrain several times in the coming years on new systems and totally different ways to work. Know that there will be jobs coming that we can't right now conceive of. As a business, you need to understand that all things we just finished discussing will be changing your business model. The pragmatic leader needs to be ready to pivot the business when the need arises, but they must keep in mind that pivoting means keeping one foot firmly planted, while the other explores for the next place to step. During the pandemic, we saw companies scrambling to adapt. Many faced pressures that they had never seen before, like 80 to 100% declines in revenue almost overnight. Companies that had already embraced being online and working remotely did far better than those that hadn't. Every business suddenly had to operationalize work from home. It was surprising to so many business leaders that employees didn't just watch movies and play video games all day, they actually worked. Not only did our employees adapt to working remotely, many excelled. Our teams came up with great solutions for remaining connected and collaborating remotely. And those businesses that helped us solve some of the remote working challenges, they just exploded. Zoom wasn't even a word I used very much, and now I Zoom constantly. In the last couple months, I've done some things that I could never have dreamed would be part of my job. I negotiated a lease for virtual real estate in a virtual campus for Georgian College so we can have our students, staff, and faculty interact in a video game like world no matter where they might be signing in from. We'll have classes in there, professional meetings, events, conferences, and social events. I had a business meeting about how to use VR to train students and staff while standing on the surface of the coronavirus in AltSpace VR. And I attended a 4-day virtual conference called Accelerate, where I heard amazing keynote talks, participated in Cajun cooking classes over the noon hour, and socialized with other attendees during the wine and beer tasting sessions in the evenings. Best part about it was I didn't have to leave my home office and I could just pop in and out of the talks as I needed. It was incredibly convenient and really enlightening and incredibly inspiring. The next two perspectives I just want to talk about are in this comic. The one on the left, we have a guy who's clearly embraced his digital transformation. And on the right, not so much. So let's start on the right side. All right, let's get something straight here. I'm not picking on grandma, because it's not really fair for me to imply that all elderly people are against the digital wave we're riding. In fact, many are just as excited about all these new tools as I am. So instead, let this cute puppet represent some older ideas on what life is supposed to be like and how we're all supposed to be going about our days. There is a subset of people that will always resist change. Change is scary. It means the old ways of doing things will disappear. The fear is very real because people associate deeply with their own rituals and attitudes and those of like-minded people. When all that changes too quickly, people can feel lost, undervalued, and disrespected. And as a leader, you have to recognize that these older views, they can add perspective. Recall that I said when a business pivots, you must keep one foot on solid ground. You can draw on the ideas of grandma to help you better understand where your team might struggle and where you might need to spend a little extra time before bigger changes are implemented. Now think of all the young people I know. When I do that, I suddenly feel like the grandma in that image. These young people, they were born into a world where everyone has a smartphone. They probably have one too. And they've never known a world without the internet. They think nothing about collaborating with their friends online while playing a video game or watching a movie. We all think it's quite amazing that we're doing this video conferencing and chatting where, your teenage son or daughter might have been doing the exact same thing for several years now. A colleague of mine asked his son, who had always wanted to be a pilot, why he suddenly lost interest. He said, because by the time I'm old enough, there won't be pilots anymore. This is some insight that the younger generation can see the transformation coming, and it's difficult for them then to see where their career path might lead when the world is going to be very, very different even 5 years from now. Creativity, cooperation, and empathy are built into the newest generation. They're looking forward to a better world where their dreams are possible, where their work world is perfectly aligned with helping them fulfill their potential. Young people are looking at business through a different lens. They think businesses should work for the good of the world and the people, and therefore that their work should be meaningful and devoid of drudgery. So to them, a future filled with robots, androids, AI, and total automation would be great because it would allow them to work towards total self-fulfillment and contribute meaningfully to an interconnected world where everyone's needs are met easily. What we think about work right now will have faded. This is the future that many young people want and will work towards. You can see it in the voices that are rising to the top, touting these new political and economic systems, driving the fight against climate change, and thinking about the creation of jobs that we don't even consider actual jobs, like playing Fortnite professionally. But not all young people are progressives. Some fall into the resistor category. Others see digital transformation as a way to dominate or control others or suppress more liberal ideologies. I was quite surprised to find several anti-future young people in some of the VR worlds I visited. As a leader, it will be your role to monitor the attitudes and aspirations of your younger team members to see what motivates them. Recall before where I said that you need to pivot, where one foot stays in one spot while the other one is fishing around for the next place to step. This is important because stability is from keeping some of the culture and processes in place that you did before. while the other things like new technologies, new processes, this whole new work environment, and new ways of communicating, those are the new places where you're trying to step. Empower your people to build the new processes and the new culture. It's not necessarily up to you to just decide what that looks like. In fact, you'll be more successful if you allow your team to build that future. So I kind of look at it like this kind of messy pile of Lego here. If we work together as a team, we can start assembling those pieces together and build something quite incredible. Managing the multidimensional transformation means that you're actually reinventing the workplace in real time. In the past, we could sit around a board table and conduct a thorough planning process to map out our organization's trajectory over a 3 to 5 year period. And I once heard that Honda had a 150-year strategic plan. Like, I wonder if they've had to update that given the current situation we're living through. The pandemic has caused what my friend Dr. Jim Dater, the futurist, calls a cleft in time. He talks about this as a blessing for humankind. He says time has stopped but vastly accelerated. And what he really means is that while we all agree that we're rocketing ahead with our technological innovations, we've been forced to pause. COVID has forced the global economy to pause. And he tells us that despite this massive shutdown, the world didn't end. Now we have our finger over the pause button, ready to release it, to restart the world. But not so fast. That's what many people are saying. The old way of doing things was not necessarily the best. Maybe as we restart the world, we should think about doing things differently. From a practical point of view, the restart is taking place in our places of business. And as leaders, we have the opportunity to reshape the workplace to make it better for our teams and better for our communities. And while we reinvent the workplace in real time, there are several things we should examine or consider. The first is work-life balance. For many of us, working from home is great. There's nobody else here. It's quiet. You can get a lot of work done and use the typical 9 to 5 workday. For others, that doesn't work at all. They may have children or elderly parents to take care of, so that 9 to 5 time frame is not really useful for them. They may be able to work in short periods of time, early, and then maybe in the middle of the day a little bit, and in the evening. But it's the same amount of work that's accomplished each day. We can use productivity tools. So these are tools that we use as a manager to help us keep track of projects, do better communication with our team, and maintain cohesion. It's a way that we might do performance tracking or use dashboards to help everybody see where we're all at on a project. Now is the time to pilot new technology innovations. We have been given this opportunity, so let's take advantage of it. I mentioned before that we were exploring this idea of a virtual campus for the college, because when we're working from home, despite the fact that we have video conferencing, we still do feel disconnected. So if we have a virtual campus, I can pop in there and feel physically close to the people that I work with in an actual virtual 3D space. It may go even further in the short term, where we all think about virtual reality. One thing to consider is the right tool for the job. There's this thing that's popping up all the time now, Zoom fatigue. You're seeing yourself and you're seeing your colleagues all day long, and it does get tiresome. So sometimes you might want to consider, let's just have a phone call, because the traditional old style phone call is less intrusive, but you still get the same things done. We must also consider the pace of change. We need to implement change at the right pace for our team and for individual team members. Return on investment is always important to business. And here in the digital transformation, we are pivoting. So we're definitely going to have to make some investments. But we have to be careful. It's best right now to think short term. Things that we do now may actually be out of date or irrelevant within a year from now. So this is definitely going to be a challenge for leaders as we budget for the year ahead. Don't lock yourself into something that you may regret. There might seem to be too many options in front of you to really manage the change that's happening. But I have 5 things that you can do to better guide your way through this digital transformation. The first is to create a digital transformation plan. The plan really is like a strategic plan, but we're looking out only a year ahead, maybe 2 years, and we're focusing mostly on how the people transform over that time and what kinds of investments you want to make in different kinds of technologies and tools for your workplace. We need to manage expectations because everybody sees change differently. Some of your employees may love it. They kind of thrive in the chaos of solving all these new problems. But other people in your organization may be very nervous about things that are changing and that their job is going to change. They're going to need to learn all these new things. So there's some internal communication that can happen that can smooth that out. But externally, you also need to be thinking about your customers, your shareholders or stakeholders. How are they seeing your organization as it transforms? And a good communication plan can really help you manage expectations and implement a change management process. You can decide how you want to speak with your employees and plan out some sessions to train them on some of the new ideas that are coming out, allow them to contribute to the change management process by discussing how the change is affecting them and the ways that they would like to see the change progress. Part of your change management process might be actually to implement a transition team. So, a set of employees whose job it is to help the entire workplace move to a new way of doing things. You can leverage early adopters and the resistors. So those early adopters, they're ready to jump on anything. If you say you're getting a new collaboration tool, they're ready to use it. They may be the ones that are bringing it up and saying we need to use this. So leverage them. If they want to be champions and bring in a new technology, let them try it and pilot it out and see if they can bring people with them. If it's working, that's great. But you can also leverage your resistors because those are the ones who are saying, wait a second, this isn't something that I think is a good idea. It's not making my life easier. It's not making my job easier. That can give you some clues on that return on investment. Is this actually a good idea for your workplace? Just because it's cool and exciting doesn't mean the entire team needs to be working in virtual reality. So it's really important to elevate the comfort level of everyone. I mentioned before this idea of having a change management process. So these two things can be connected, but you need to spend time moving everybody up a level. And if you do that, your entire organization will be stronger and more stable. So there's actually 6 things that you should do, and there's one hiding there behind my video feed, and it's super important, and I want to talk about it all on its own. It's about measuring your progress and recognizing success when you reach those milestones. Around my team, I talk about metrics a lot, and we think about it quite a bit when we're discussing, entrepreneurship and business and, impact in a community. We talk about things like upstream and downstream metrics. And probably you're more familiar with downstream ones because they're easy to identify. These are like the outcomes that you're hoping for, like maybe more revenue or happier employees. And upstream metrics can sometimes be a bit harder because they're the things you're doing now that lead to the outcomes. For example, you could track how many of your employees are working from home, which is an upstream metric, and how that impacts your sales numbers, which is a downstream metric. So if you discover that, yes, actually having all my people work from home, sales are going up. And then you can study that a little bit more to find out why that is actually happening. Another example could be that you want to monitor the mental wellness or happiness of your employees through surveys or a mental health index. That would be downstream. So it's their actual wellness and feeling of wellness that you're measuring. And then compare that to your new procedures and guidelines for working remotely, which are upstream things that you might be doing. So did the policy actually lead to happier employees? So celebrate small and big wins. So if your team has done something really great and they've tried something new in a new way and that led to a better way to do things, so things became more efficient or people are happier in what they were doing and you saw some good outcomes, you can celebrate those. A good time to celebrate that it would be at your team meetings where you can call out somebody or shout out to somebody and say, hey, I really loved how you did that and that really helped us do our job better or made me feel better, made me feel more part of the team. Because a lot of us, when we're working in this new work world remotely, we may feel disconnected. And so celebrating those small wins can actually make people feel really good. But you may have some big wins too. So you're implementing something massive, a big transformation. Like, we had this idea of doing this big virtual campus for the college. We may want to celebrate that through things like press releases and videos or social media and other ways of communicating the big success. One thing I always say is that success stories are a little bit like currency for an organization. You set these milestones in your plan and then you work towards them and you achieve them. They may be small, they may be big, but by telling your story as you go, you help all of your employees understand the transformation and all the success that you're achieving, but also in the community because they can celebrate the successes with you. So thanks for going on this journey with me today. I know we covered a lot of ground in talking about leading the workplace through digital transformation. I really feel that these are incredibly exciting times, and I'm quite proud to be one of the leaders at Georgian College who's helping that organization go through its digital transformation. I think it's going to lead to a better quality of life and better work life balance for our students and staff and faculty. So, thanks again for listening. And I would love to hear all about your transformations. So, please contact me if you're interested in chatting more or type some comments down in the video.